Hello friends, in this video we are going to see about CPU scheduling in operating system. Before going into it, first we have to know what is scheduling and what's the need of using the scheduling right here. So the scheduling of the process is usually done to finish the work on the time or at the different time with respect to process scheduling. So we may all know that usually a process may contain both the input-output time and the CPU time for execution. So for better understanding, we have to know the need of the scheduling. So for that, we have to make a comparison between a uniprogramming system and the multiprogramming system right here. So in a uniprogramming platform like MS-DOS, the time spent waiting for an input-output device is wasted, whereas the CPU is idle at that time. That is, the CPU is available at that time, but the process will keep on wasting its time by waiting for an input-output device. So this is one of the major drawback, right? So that's why we are switching from uniprogramming system to the multiprogramming system. In a multiprogramming platform, one process can use the CPU while another process is waiting for an IO. This situation is possible only with the CPU scheduling. That's why CPU scheduling in operating system is one of the fundamental functionality where almost all the computer resources must be scheduled before use. And this is the need of the scheduling here. So next let us see about the types of the schedulers. There are three types of the schedulers. First is long-term scheduler, second is short-term scheduler, and third is the mid-term scheduler. First let us see about the long-term scheduler. So the long-term scheduler, the role of the long-term scheduler is to select the job from the pool of disk and load these jobs into a ready queue. That means simply let us consider this disk as our hard disk. What long-term scheduler will do means it will pick the job from the hard disk and it will get loaded those jobs into our main memory. Our main memory is our ready queue. Okay, so that's why the long-term scheduler is also called as a job scheduler here. Next, when coming to the short-term scheduler, what short-term scheduler will do? It used to pick a job or process from the ready queue and then give the process to the CPU here. So who will do this? The short-term scheduler along with the dispatcher it will do. So the dispatcher, we have to know about dispatcher right here. So the dispatcher is nothing but a module which gives the control of the CPU to the process selected by the short-term scheduler. So sometimes the part of the short-term scheduler and dispatcher, both of them are different module, or sometimes it may be of the same module. Okay, so it depends. Sometimes the short-term scheduler can limit itself to picking up the process and actual scheduling. That means the context switching will be taken place by the dispatcher. That means one of the main functionality of the dispatcher is context switching. That means it switches the CPU from the one process to the another process right here. So the short-term scheduler is also called as the CPU scheduler here. Next, when coming to the mid-term scheduler, let us consider if the process is in execution. Okay, so in the middle of the execution, suppose a process requests an IO, some other resources, IO or CPU, any other resources it may request. So at that time what it will happen means then the process removed from the main memory. The process will be removed from the main memory is loaded into the waiting queue. Here this is a waiting queue here. So when the IO operation, here the IO operation is completed, then the job moved from the waiting queue to the ready queue here. So these two operations are performed by the midterm scheduler here. So these are the three types of the schedulers here, and one thing I have forgotten to say, in the short-term scheduler, the method of selecting a process from the ready queue by the short-term scheduler is depending upon the scheduling algorithms only. So that is one of the major important thing. So these are the type of the schedulers. Next, let us see about CPU scheduling. Yeah, as we have seen already, CPU scheduling is a process which allows one process to use the CPU while another process is on hold due to the unavailability of CPU or IO resources. So the aim of the CPU scheduling is to make the system efficient and to run faster. So this is the aim of the CPU scheduling. Next, When coming to the objectives of the CPU scheduling, these are the 5 criteria of the scheduling. First one is the CPU utilization, second is the throughput, third is the turnaround time, fourth is waiting time, and fifth is our response time. So these criteria will help us to determine the efficiency of the particular scheduling algorithm. So in that, first let us see about CPU utilization. CPU utilization means how much CPU is utilized so far. That means when the CPU is busy, some process is being executed already. Okay, so when the CPU is busy, more work is done or more process is executed. That means ideally the CPU will range from 0 to 100% here. Okay, in the real system, it may range from 40% for the lightly loaded system to the 90% for the heavily loaded system. So, more CPU is busy, more process or work is done. So, we have to do this. We have to know, don't remain the CPU idle here. So, this is the CPU utilization here. Next, when coming to throughput, throughput is nothing but if the CPU is busy in executing the process. In CPU utilization, we have to keep the CPU as busy as possible. So if the CPU is busy in executing those process, then the work is being done. Okay. So the measure of the work done by the CPU is our throughput here. So how do we measure the work? See here, the number of processes completed per unit time is our measurement of the work. So it may range from 10 or second to 1 or hour depending on the specific processes. So next, when coming to the turnaround time nothing but it means how long it takes to execute the particular process. That means here we are trying to see in the view of process, whereas in the throughput we have tried to see in the view of the CPU. But in the turnaround time we are going to see in the view of process. That means here we can see that it is an interval from the submission time to the completion time. So the time required for a particular process to complete. This is the turnaround time. Next, when coming to waiting time, it is the sum of the periods spent waiting in the ready queue. That means how much time the process spent in the ready queue waiting their turn to get onto the CPU is the waiting time. So next, response time. In an interactive program, the turnaround time may not be the best criteria to be used to judge the scheduling algorithm, whereas a response time have been used in the interactive program. Why means here the response time is nothing but what is the time taken to produce the first response is considered, but not the time which is taken to output the response. Okay. For example, let us consider a video file. In your system, you are having one video file and you are clicking on that particular video file. But you are clicking that video file twice or thrice. Okay, so it has been taking some little bit time to load. Okay, but for the first time, for the first response to be produced in the background is your response time, not the output which have been produced is the response time. The first click which you have been clicked, no, in your background, that only your response time. This is an example of the response time here. So the time at which the first it has been produced its response, not the time it has been taken to output the response. The output video we will be displaying, that is not the response time, the first click which you have been clicked. So when you are clicking the video thrice, simultaneously the three videos have been running, have been executing, the three processes have been executing in the background, but upon that the first click only matters the response time. So this is a response time. So these are the 5 criteria of the CPU scheduling. Next, let us see about transition states. These are the transition states. In that first we may see about we can see about run to termination. Okay, run to termination is nothing but if a process given to the CPU is terminated. So, and it does not need the CPU anymore. So the CPU will be idle. No. So this is the process of run to termination. So it is one of the natural event which occurs often. So next, run to wait. When coming to the run to wait, when the process is in running, it need input output or some other event or some other resources which is not currently available at that particular time. So what it will do means, then it is going to wait a block for particular resource at that time, and it will pick one of the process from the ready state and it will schedule it. So in these two states, run to termination and run to wait, the CPU is idle here. So next, third state is run to ready. The run to ready, when it will happen means when an interrupt occurs. Okay, that means here we can use the two things. First one is the timer or the quantum time. That means every process we have to set up a timer, okay, time or quantum time or a timer. So we have to use that much time and leave the CPU. So therefore in the timeout event, it is going to trigger the transition, that is from the run to ready state here. So the timer is necessary in run to ready state. So next, new to ready. Here new to ready is fully based upon the priority only it will happen. That means suddenly a newly joined ready. New to ready means what? Newly joined ready state enters into the ready queue. If it has that newly entered ready state as the high priority when compared to all other process, this particular situation may happen. So it will pull out the less priority process from the CPU and gives the high priority process. So it's based upon the priority only new to ready will occur. So next, when coming to wait to ready, let us see this example for wait to ready state. So as we have said, we are picking a job from the ready state and we are getting loaded into the CPU. So that process have the priority is equal to 13. Okay. So the priority is equal to 13 enters into the CPU. Okay. So at that time, it wants some other resources suddenly. So what it will do, it will move on to the waiting queue. Here WS is the waiting state. It will move on to the waiting state here. So at this time the CPU will remain idle. So the CPU is free here. So what it will happen means, therefore the next available resources, which are the available resources next, next process will move on to the next priority process will move on to the CPU. Consider the priority is equal to 12, move into the CPU here. Okay, how long it will run? It will run as the priority is equal to 13 is not available in CPU. It will keep on running. So at this time, the priority is equal to 13 finish its IO requirement. What are the resources? What are the requirement it needed? It will finish this IO requirement and it will enters into the ready state and it will enters into the CPU here. At this time, what it will happen? The priority is equal to 12 will be preempted, that is it will be pulled out. That's why I have marked it as cross. Why means after the resource has been allocated for this, the high priority process have been entered into the CPU, so it must have to pull the low priority process which is 12. Okay, so this is the process of wait to ready here. This situation may depends upon the priority of the process only. Not all the time it won't schedule. It will depend upon the priority of the process only. Okay, these are the transition states. So depending upon these transition states, we may conclude the non-priority scheduling and the non-preemptive scheduling and the preemptive scheduling here. So these are the two types of the scheduling, which is the preemptive and the non-preemptive scheduling. As we have seen in the previous preemptive schedulings, which is from run to ready state and waiting to ready state. Non-preemptive scheduling will process from terminates, or it will process from the running to the waiting state. So these are the things you can read. But for the simple understanding, we may easily say that what the non-preemptive and the preemptive scheduling will do. Here, the first two transitions are the non-preemptive scheduling. So how it is designed means, when the process enters into the running state, it cannot be preempted. That is, it cannot be forcefully taken until it completes its allotted time. So until it completes its allotted time, we can't forcefully taken or we can't preempt this. Okay, so here there is no need of any special hardware interrupt in non-preemptive scheduling, whereas in the preemptive scheduling there is a need of a special hardware interrupt like timer. We have seen in new to ready timer or a quantum time is needed here. And another thing is it is based upon the priority, no. So that means when the scheduler may preempt a low priority running process anytime when high priority process enters into the ready state. So this is the preemptive scheduling. So this is the difference between the non-preemptive scheduling and the preemptive scheduling here. So these are the types of scheduling here, and next let us see about different types of time depending upon the process parameters. There are 6 different types of time. First is the arrival time, second is the completion time, third is the burst time, fourth is turnaround time, fifth is waiting time, and sixth is response time. Let us make it easily clear by seeing this diagram. Okay, so next now a process P, any process, let us consider any process P which enters into the ready state here, which is called as the arrival time here. So the process enters in the ready state is called as the arrival time here. Next, when coming to the burst time, the amount of the time taken by the process to complete its execution, that is, it talks about the CPU time here, not the waiting time. Okay, it talks about the CPU time here. It is called as the burst time here. Next, when coming to the completion time, the time at which the process terminates or completes is called as the completion time here. Okay. So next, when coming to the turnaround time, how turnaround time differ means in between these two times, completion time and the arrival times, the turnaround time will keep on executing the cycle such as waiting time. Again it will run, again it will wait, again it will run. So like that, there is a series of transitions will occur in the turnaround time. So the turnaround time is calculated as the difference between the completion time minus the arrival time. We can see it. Here. See, the turnaround time is the completion time minus the arrival time, or the waiting time plus the burst time, or the waiting time plus the burst time. That's your turnaround time. Next, when coming to the waiting time, what the waiting time will do means, if we are removing the running time in our turnaround time, it becomes our waiting time. That means we have said already, no, in between the arrival time and the completion time there is a transition such as waiting, running, waiting, like that it will keep on going. So in that, if we are removing that running, it will becomes the waiting time. So how we may calculate this means, see, waiting time is equal to turnaround time minus burst time here. See, the turnaround time minus the burst time is your waiting time here. Okay. So next, when coming to our response time is nothing but after the arrival of the process. That is, first we have been when a ready process have been arrived. No, so after the arrival of that ready process, the first time that process gets the CPU is our response time. We have already seen in scheduling criteria, no, the first time the response happens. So that's the same only. So for example, let us consider this. If the process P1 is equal to 5 seconds, that means if the process comes at 5 seconds and that process P1 gets the CPU at 20 seconds. So how the response time is calculated means 20 minus 5 is equal to 15 seconds. So after the arrival of that process, the process gets the CPU at the first time is our response time. So these are the 6 different types of the time. Okay. You can go through this diagram and that formulas. And next, when coming to our conclusion, and these are the 6 important points we have to be considered for selection of a good scheduling criteria. Okay, first one is a maximum CPU utilization. That means we have to keep our CPU as busy as possible. That is the meaning of the here fair allocation of CPU. Second, we have to keep our throughput maximum, and our turnaround time, waiting time and response time should be minimum. And these 6 things are to be selected for the good scheduling algorithm. If we have to choose our scheduling algorithm, we have to consider these 6 things. These 6 things we have to keep in our mind. So these are the points to be considered. So that's all for today's video, and thank you all. Thank you.